Hi. So right now we're doing 18.3. So 18.3 is about building industrial, what is it? It's titled Building. I'm trying to do some better handwriting, but it's not really working. Industrial America on the backs of labor. So we just love taking advantage of people now. We always have. So economic growth versus worker reality. Let's talk a little bit about that. Like late 19th century US industrial growth created kind of like a dilemma. The standard of living increased for some, but many workers faced very harsh conditions. Andrew Carnegie, we know about this guy. Andrew Carnegie, he that's not the guy who made the AC, I'm pretty sure, sorry. Andrew Carnegie, but his things are Andrew Carnegie. He noted in the Gospel of Wealth that the poor could now enjoy goods previously reserved for the rich, and luxuries became necessities. Despite falling prices and costs of living improvements, most of the working class in America experienced poor factory and home conditions, which sparked a lot of doubts about about economic order benefiting a wealthy few at the expense of labor. Oh my god. Okay. So the shift from rural to urban work, post Civil War, the workforce shifted dramatically. Oh my god. 1865, approximately 60% of Americans worked and lived on like farms. What's a good that's good. And in the early 1900s, it was only 40% rural, and the majority now live in urban/suburban areas working in factories. Mechanization of farms increased output with fewer workers, which pushed many into industrial employment. Self-employment also declined as factory work and wage dependency rose. Wages were very low. This is crazy to look at, especially since we live in California. So wages were 20 cents per hour, which is roughly $600 per year. And around 20% of urban populations lived at or below poverty levels. So whatever you want to and also safety was very poor. By 1913, 25,000 Americans died on the job, and 700,000 suffered injuries, causing at least 1 month of missed work. Factory work was also repetitive, solitary, and skill limited, and was challenging for those used to collaborative or craft work. Frederick Taylor's scientific management Frederick Taylor, Frederick Taylor's scientific management or stopwatch management segmented tasks to maximize efficiency and profit with little regard for worker well-being, and his methods made employees they're just like parts of a machine, and they wanted to prioritize productivity over personal interaction. The breakdown of work processes allowed factory owners to employ women and children, and from 1870 through 1900, the 1900, the number of women working outside the home tripled, reaching 5 million in 1900, and about 25% of these people worked in factories. Most women were also under 25 and were immigrants or daughters of immigrants. And factory work was a financial necessity, not empowerment or equality. Women mostly worked in clothing and textile factories or in clerical roles like bookkeeping, secretarial work, and sales. Wages for women were way lower than men's, justified by the notion that men should provide for them. Children were also employed because they could fit among machines and perform very simple tasks for low pay. From 1870 through 1900, child labor in factories tripled. So they both tripled, women and children. Progressive reformers raised concerns about the safety of women and children, forming lobby groups and pressing states and Congress for protective legislation, though major reforms came a lot later. Many immigrants' families still relied on the additional wages women and children earned, despite harsh conditions. And workers were very aware of the huge gap between their conditions and the wealth of factory owners. Lacking resources and legal protections, some communities erupted in spontaneous violence. Notably in eastern Pennsylvania coal mines and western Pennsylvania railroad yards. These violent outbursts and other factors delayed effective labor organization until the 20th century. Whew, okay. And factory owners resisted unions by open shops, which was non-union workplaces, strike breakers, and yellow dog contracts, which was like their employees would just agree to not join the unions. And union efforts were complicated by racial and ethnic diversity among low-paid workers and language and cultural barriers from southeastern European immigrants. The greatest obstacle was public sentiment, widespread belief in individual work ethic over collective organization, reinforced by violent outbreaks that made unions appear radical or un-American. Okay. Whew. Oh, okay. The Molly Maguires. Irish coal miners in eastern Pennsylvania formed a secret group called the Molly Maguires, named after a famous Irish patriot. Famous Irish patriot. And their goal was to draw attention to miners' harsh conditions using scare tactics like kidnappings, beatings, and murder. So mine owners responded by hiring detectives to infiltrate the group and gather names of participants. By 1875, 24 suspected Maguires were identified, convicted of murder and property violence. 10 were publicly hanged in 1877 on the day of the rope, quote, as a result, the violent protests were crushed, demonstrating that unorganized, sporadic labor violence led to escalated reprisals and not improved conditions. Just the public did not support labor's violent methods, as seen with the Molly Maguires, and let's go on to the Great Railroad Strike of looks like a stroke, but I don't care. The Great Railroad Strike of 1877. The cause of this one was that railroad workers in West Virginia faced a significant pay cut. And spontaneously went on strike, blocking the tracks. Sympathy strikes erupted nationwide. Workers engaged in vandalism, while local citizens, often family or friends, initially sympathized. And Pittsburgh was the center of the worst violence. Militiamen from Philadelphia were sent to protect property, and they opened fire, killing 20, wounding 29. A riot followed with looting, fire, and chaos lasting for 24 hours. Additional clashes resulted in 20 more deaths. Violence also spread to Maryland and Illinois, and President Hayes sent federal troops to restore orders. The strike lasted for 45 days, but workers really gained nothing, and the violent outbreaks reduced public sympathy. Laborers recognized that substantial improvement in living and working conditions would only come through better organization and not uncoordinated violence. Before the Civil War, organized labor was minimal because most workers were independent and rural. By the 1880s, industrial and economic changes increased in awareness of worker inequities. Farmers also recognized the power of collective action. The National Labor Union, 1886. This was formed by 77 delegates representing various occupations in Baltimore. Goals included equal rights for African Americans and women, currency reform, and a legally mandated 8-hour workday. Their achievements were that they successfully lobbied Congress for an 8-hour day for federal employees, and their decline was because of the Panic of 1873, economic recession, and the death of the NLU founder reduced its effectiveness. And the Panic of 1873, which is the Great Depression of the 1870s, the causes was the end of the railroad boom from 1840 to 1870, overinvestments in railroads via bonds, effects of European economic developments, and a de facto gold standard reducing U.S. monetary supply. And the trigger of the Panic of 1807 was the bankruptcy of the J. Cook and Co., which planned to finance a new transcontinental road. The consequences of this was a chain reaction of bank failures and NYSE, whatever you say, suspending trade for 10 days on September of 1873. And over 100 railroads failed in a year, and 20,000 businesses failed within 2 years. They had massive job and wage losses, fueling worker frustrations and calls for reform. And let's talk about the Knights of Labor, the KOL. from 1873 to 1886. This is founded by Philadelphia tutor Taylor. Philly Taylor Uriah Stevens during the Panic of 1873 and grew nationally by 1878. Their platform was for a broad reform, like an 8-hour workday, equal pay regardless of gender, elimination of convict labor, and creation of cooperative enterprises with worker ownership. And the concept of one big union, which welcomed all wage workers except for doctors, lawyers, and bankers, and included women, African Americans, Native Americans, and immigrants. And the leadership of Terence B. Powderly from 1879. This boosted membership through promotion and opposed strikes as primary tactics, but achieved victories in railroad strikes from 1884 through 1885, including action against Jay Gould. Thank God that guy needs to be stopped. And by 1886, membership exceeded 70,000 people. The Haymarket Affair. May the 4th be with you, and 1886. So, obviously, the location was at Haymarket Square, Chicago. And the protests followed the death of a worker at an earlier nationwide demonstration for the 8-hour workday at the International Harvester Company, and the event was anarchists held a peaceful protest, but police arrived armed. There was a bomb thrown at police, killing one officer and injuring another. 7 anarchists, speaking of the protest, were arrested and charged with murder and sentenced to death. 2 pardoned. 1 committed suicide in a prison. So 2 pardoned, 1 suicide, and then death. Other ones sentenced to death. Impact on the Knights of Labor, the KOL. The press falsely blamed the KOL and their leader, Terence Powderly. It's like a dumb name. Public sentiments against organized labor caused KOL membership to drop to around 100,000 by the end of 1886. And despite its collapse, the KOL demonstrated the potential of industrial unionism, welcoming workers from all trades, and craft unions, and the formation of the AFL in 1886. So 20 craft unions met to form a national federation of autonomous craft unions, the American Federation of Labor. American Federation Labor. These guys have stupid names. Their leader was Samuel Gompers. First we had Terence Powderly, and now we have like Samuel Gompers. 1886 through 1924, and their focus was primarily economic gains for members, and they also avoided political issues unless directly affecting working conditions. They maintained a policy of non-interference in each union's internal business. And the Gompers used the AFL to the Gompers, Samuel Gompers, their leader, used the AFL to settle disputes between unions and represent unions in matters of federal legislation, such as campaigns for the 8-hour workday. And the AFL growth by 1900 they had 500,000 members. By 1914 they had 1 million members, and by 1920 they had 4 million members. And as a federation of craft unions, the AFL excluded many factory workers. Even at its peak, it only represented 15% of non-farm workers. And as a result, most American workers still lacked support, protection from owners, and upward mobility. So, the Homestead Steel Strike. Of 1892. This was at the location Carnegie Steel Company, which we know Andrew Carnegie. Carnegie Steel Company, in Pennsylvania, in Homestead, Pennsylvania. The union was the okay, how do I say this? Amalgamated Association of Iron and Steel Workers. Their management was Henry C. Frick, stupid name again, who was anti-union, and acting while Carnegie was in Scotland. And June 29, the union contract expired, no settlement reached. Frick ordered lockout and hired 300 Pinkerton detectives, and July 6th, there was a gunfight between union workers and Pinkertons, and deaths were 3 Pink. 6 workers died. Lockout continued until November, ending with union defeat. Workers returned individually. Anarchist Alexander Berkman, his failed assassination attempt on Frick worsened public opinion against the union. And then we have the Pullman strike. Pullman strike of 1894. Location was Pullman, Illinois, company town producing Pullman sleeper cars, and the context was the Depression of 1893, overconstruction and poor financing in railroads, and George Pullman fired 3,000 of 6,000 workers. So out of his 6,000, he fired half of them. And he also cut wages by 25% while keeping high rents and prices. Isn't that insane? In May 11th, 1894, Eugene V. Debs, president, Eugene V. Debs, president of American Railway Union, he ordered nationwide rail workers to stop handling Pullman cars. This affected nearly all trains and created a nationwide train stoppage. President Grover Cleveland sent troops, citing mail delivery protection, and Debs refused to end the strike, arrested and imprisoned for interfering with U.S. mail. And the outcome was the strike ended on July 13th, and with no labor gains, and damaged public perception of labor movements. So both public opinions of labor unions declined sharply from these two strikes, and workers remained largely unprotected, and union efforts were weakened for decades. Thank you. That's it. That's literally it for this one. Oh gosh. Okay, bye.